Good evening, treasure hunters. This is Blake coming to you live from New Mexico, and joining me, as always, from Washington State, it's Bryn and Cody. How's it going, guys?
Excellent. I feel like we're getting ourselves into a controversial chapter here about I don't know, the significance of what we've found. So it's going to be an
Interesting.
exciting episode.
I didn't know there was controversy involved on
Well,
this. That's
just Blake thinks there's a lot of information, Cody not so much. So I think we'll have a good discussion.
okay. Fair enough.
Oh yeah, I'm doing well, Blake. I found another benefit of this podcast. I've got probably 3 or 4 shirts in my closet that shrunk in the wash a little too much. They're a little too short. But guess when I get to wear them now? It's the perfect opportunity.
Yeah, I can't see your belly.
Can't see my belly button poking now.
All right, everybody, welcome. This is There's Treasure Inside, the unofficial podcast. This podcast is covering the newly released book by Jon Collins-Black called There's Treasure Inside, where he's hidden a number of treasures around the United States that are of high value in the, he said, easily 6 figures range. So we're on the hunt looking for these treasures, talk about some of our solves at the beginning segments of this podcast, and then this episode will be covering chapter 4 of There's Treasure Inside and talking about our thoughts and our Forrest Fenn Picked Nuggets for each of those, for each of the chapters that we cover during this podcast. So this will be chapter 4. I think we'll start out with news as we usually do. All right, so news for the day is it's official that second edition versions of There's Treasure Inside are hitting the wild right now. This is pretty exciting because I think there's a lot of typos that have been fixed in the second edition books. So I think we're relying heavily on the community right now, at least us as a team personally, to figure out what got captured in those typos that were fixed in the second edition version of the book compared to the first edition, where there were a number of typos. We covered one glaring one in chapter 2, the chapter 2 episode of the podcast about Tu Yet Nu Yet, a misspelling in the main title of the chapter of Tu Yet's name. So anyway, exciting to see if there's anything we can glean from the second edition version of the book. The good news associated with that as well is that more people are going to be getting copies of the book because it was heavily back ordered on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and other retailers. So I think we're expecting on the order of 100,000 copies of this second edition book to hit the shelves. Everybody with that first edition, maybe it's a collector's item now. I don't know, but it should be less confusing.
Wish you would have told us that before Bryn marked ours all up in pen.
Really? You got the pen out on yours?
Day 1, she got the pen out on it.
Oh, okay, good. I've been keeping mine.
I'm here to find treasure.
Yeah, once we find the treasure, we can buy all the books.
Yeah, so that's the news I have to report. Not too groundbreaking, but I think exciting for a lot of folks that are, waiting to join the hunt. I know there's a lot of people online already hunting without the book. They're just looking at the, clues and screenshots that others have posted. So getting your hands on your own copy of the book will be great. And they'll be a lot more accessible, hopefully, with this new print run.
I think Cody even called out a instance of boots on the ground without the book yet. So
yes. Yeah, I'm planning on covering that one during the Discord detective segment in a future episode of the Montana Solve. I think that was a pretty epic one. So
yeah.
Pretty bold to go boots on the ground, search for the treasure without even having a copy of the book yet. That's pretty confident.
Yeah.
Right. That was it for news. Shall we go into the horseshoes and hand grenades segment? I think I'm leading that one as well. So, horseshoes and hand grenades portion of the podcast. That's where we're talking about some of our own personal solves that we've attempted. Again, this is mainly focused on the past and future box. That's one of the chapters in part 2 of the book. So just to be clear, part 1 of the book is mainly revolved around the lion's share treasure, which is the largest treasure box, at least in value, and I think in size. I'm not sure actually. But there's like 23 chapters, I think, associated with the lion's share box that you have to use all the information to try to solve. And then there's 4 boxes that are smaller boxes that have also been hidden around the United States. And those each have a single chapter devoted to solving those particular boxes. And we're working on the past and future box mainly as a team here. And so this is a solve that we tried, we're excited about, but maybe hasn't panned out exactly as we thought. And so that's why we're horseshoes and hand grenades, because we feel like we were close, but maybe it didn't quite pan out. Full disclosure, maybe there is a solve associated with these, and we'll look back and shake our heads if we didn't find the treasure because of it. But community is welcome to take these and run with them if they think there's something behind them. So I'm going to be focusing on a cipher today. It's called a Playfair cipher. Basically, it's a 5x5 block of letters that are arranged based on a keyword that you provide to the 5x5 box of letters to slightly rearrange those letters. And then when you put in a message that's been encoded, you can use that 5x5 block of letters to decode the message depending on what your keyword was. And so the reason that I think this is a really good approach to solving part of the word search in the past and future box is there is still a section of the word search that seems to be suspiciously unsolved, and it has a grouping of letters that is not commonly used letters, so it's really hard to try to make an anagram out of that. I'll try to pull it up right now. So there's a particular block of letters here at the bottom of the word search that I've highlighted in pink that I haven't seen a lot of people say they have a solve for yet. And so the reason the Playfair cipher kind of rang a bell is there is some ways to anagram part of the word search to say use a simple cipher or apply a simple cipher. And so there is thoughts within the community as a whole that maybe a cipher has to be applied to some part of this word search to get one of the clues out of it. This section seems to be a prime candidate for that because of the weird letters that are associated here. The Playfair cipher needs pairs of letters, and so I've tried to approach this in 2 ways. Oh, Cody, go ahead. You have a question.
Yeah, I do have my hand raised because I have a question. You're just I didn't want to interrupt you. You're doing great, but I just wanted to clarify real quick. You said that there is an anagram in there that said use a simple cipher.
Apply a simple cipher.
Apply a simple cipher. Was there? I thought we found one that said apply S cipher.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to be real clear about that, so that people aren't looking, if they're trying to recreate what we're telling them we found, they aren't going to find the word simple. So just want to make that clear in case anyone's trying to recreate what we've done.
Definitely. And so that's a good point you bring up, because there was another solve of an anagram that I saw that said something about play cipher, or cipher play is another way to anagram kind of part of this bottom section. And so play would indicate a Playfair cipher if you were to put those pieces together, potentially. So kind of a couple pieces of evidence why I went down this route. And this route took me many hours to go down, and I'll try to show you exactly what I did in a rapid way here. So the Playfair cipher, to decode it, generally you need two pairs of letters, or you need pairs of letters. And so there's kind of two orientations that I looked into here for full transparency. One is just to list the letters horizontally. So X, Z, F, D, Q, N, G, Q, Z, P, which would give you 5 pairs of letters. But I also thought maybe you could go vertically, because the way this is laid out, X and N might be together, Z and G might be together. So I tried to apply the Playfair cipher in both orientations here to try to decode this. Let me pull up another figure here. So this is an example of one of the Playfair cipher tools that I used from online. It's from Boxentrix. Basically, you put that combination of letters in the box here, and we're trying to decrypt it. So you'd click this decrypt button, and then it gives you a result. And now the key here is that you need an encryption key typed in here to try to decrypt this message. And so you can see my encryption key that I used here was zeros, because that's one of the potential words in the word search that has been found. And you can see we get a different combination of letters back out. Thoughts here are to try to now anagram that into something that has meaning, because as you can see here, it's just a combination of letters that is almost just as confusing as the starting letters. So I used more of a brute force approach. So I started with just using this tool and using words that are in the word search as the encryption key, and just did that manually and kind of ran out of steam on that. I didn't find anything that looked reasonable. And so what I did was do a brute force approach, which I'll show you here next. Here, using this tool from Winopolis. Basically what you can do here is put in your ciphertext, which again is that 10 letters from the word search. It has a dictionary already built in, so a dictionary of known words. A lot of proper nouns as well. You can kind of choose how complex your dictionary is, and then it tests every keyword from that dictionary to try to get a result out. And then basically what I would do is I'd scan through these really long lists of decrypted letters and see if I could find any meaning out of those. And that took me a number of hours late into the night a few nights ago. So I think you guys are aware of how late I was up trying this. I think the interesting thing here that I'm presenting is kind of my most promising decryptions. And there's a couple different versions of this. One, I was just looking for decryptions that had like a reasonable number of vowels to try to anagram. So for example, gazed kind of gave this anagram out, which decrypts into sad chapter. So that's probably not specific enough for a solve, but I don't know how much information you're expecting to get out of 10 letters. The other one I've highlighted here, this was kind of an interesting one that you can actually kind of read. Use KPS signal is how I translated that. But the keyword like makes no sense to me. So this is like a really weird word out of the keyword dictionary that generated this. So again, I'm very skeptical of this particular one. I tried, as I said, some of the keywords from the word search or other concepts. Last podcast we talked about Zork a little bit, so I tried that one. And then one of the other interesting ones here, skywords or skyward, which if you think about the paragraph that's associated with the word search, right below the word search, they talk about basking in the heavens, right? So this one kind of stood out to me. And if you read this, it says, "You pull me up," which I thought was interesting, but might just be a random coincidence, let's say, of the day. So anyway, I spent a lot of time on this. Nothing really sticking out here. I did want to, present this to the audience in case they were thinking about going down this rabbit hole. And certainly, I think there's still room here. Something I've noticed is like having a Z in the keyword seems to produce pretty good results in terms of getting good vowel to consonant ratios. And so one I'm not showing here, and I don't know where it lives, is thinking about Zork again. I know there's a connection to kind of a famous word associated with Zork, which is XXYYZ or something like that. So I tried that one as well with not really a good result. I don't know why it's not showing here, but anyway, my suggestion would be if you start going down the Playfair cipher route, try to pick keywords that have Z's, just because that improves the vowel to consonant ratio. So that's my hint if people want to try going down this route. If you come up with other keywords that maybe you find from the word search that seem reasonable, you could try those manually as well using the tool I showed before. So that's about as far as I got. Some interesting results here, but nothing that's a dead giveaway or a breakthrough, I would say, at this point. Any questions?
Yeah. Is a KPS signal a thing?
Yeah, I looked it up. I didn't find anything that made me too excited. But yeah, if you want to start Googling what a KPS signal might be, again, I didn't go down on that rabbit hole too much because I hated the keyword that was used to generate that.
Yeah.
But that was, on the brute force method, one thing that caught my eye is like use. And you saw I had a number of use phrases that kind of caught my eye, but that was the only one that really made sense if I just said it out loud. But that's what I've got for horseshoes and hand grenades for today.
Perfect. And I think we should acknowledge, again, another JCB quote. And I feel like we're starting to have this conversation with pretty much every podcast and every solve on every podcast. And it's going to go back to how literally do you take a quote from JCB. But one of his quotes was, "There is no grand cipher to solve." We acknowledge that. We did see that quote. Most of our solves, or a lot of our solves, are still involving some sort of cipher-ish type thing. So I guess it comes down to how much do you take JCB's quotes on face value,
Right.
and what is his definition of grand cipher? Because you could just do like a Caesar shift cipher by one letter. That's probably not anyone's definition of grand cipher, and then just go more difficult from there. Where's his cutoff? So I don't know. It's almost becoming an existential question at this point. But we're aware of that quote.
I think part of too, like him saying like you don't need to be a genius to solve these things, or like what is a grand cipher? It's also hard to differentiate, like, well, what are we considered able to do with internet resources versus, if we didn't have all these tools at our disposal, like, yes, then this becomes significantly more complicated. Not that it wasn't complicated, and incredibly tedious, but yeah, it's like what level is the internet and those resources intended to contribute?
Yeah,
Especially,
and of course then he has other quotes where he's kind of, again, if you take it at face value, he's alluding to the fact that you shouldn't need to use the internet. It's like, well, come on, at some point, unless you're just writing in the book the address where I need to go pick up this treasure box, there's got to be some sort of external factor.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he has a cipher in the paragraph after the word search, right? That you have to decode. Yeah. So simple ciphers seem reasonable. Whether or not a Playfair cipher is a simple cipher, that's up for debate. And once the box is found, we can debrief on that. See if any other ciphers were used at all.
I like your idea and your approach. I think it's a really good idea, and we should maybe talk offline about if there's ways to automate it to get things to happen faster, check more things if we're going the brute force route.
Yeah. I just am skeptical on how much information you can put in 10 letters. It would have to be a really good clue. And I just didn't see that in my results so far. So, all right. Horseshoes and hand grenades complete. Cody, I think you were going to talk about Discord detectives.
Yes.
Nice.
All right.
Very nice.
What you got for us?
This episode, we're going to talk real quick about the Appalachian Trail Box, or just Appalachian Box. I can't remember what it's called. Appalachian Box, we'll call it. This is another one where we're going to talk pretty quickly here about something that is basic. Not, I don't even want to say consensus because it's not consensus, but it is a popular and well-known potential solve in the Discord and on Reddit. Basically everywhere at this point. And it may be hyperbole, but I've seen people messaging that there's thousands of people at this location because of this one
Really?
hint or this one potential solve, which to me, and I haven't done all of my due diligence yet, but I'm not sure how it's definitely convincing to get you in the right area, but I don't know how if I'd even be ready to go boots on the ground based off this. But anyway, picture's worth 1,000 words. Blake, if you can pull it up.
Certainly.
So the Appalachian Box. Here it is. The Appalachian Footpath Box is the formal title of the chapter. This one, the narrative on it is super short. You're looking at it's technically on 2 different pages, but it's about 1 page worth of text. And the vast majority of the information is going to be in this map picture on the following page.
Yeah, the map
He even
the map picture, just to be clear for viewers, is this left figure. That's the map picture, top left figure. So that's how it
Yes,
is in the book.
there is that is cropped slightly. So there is slightly more information on there, but I'm specifically focusing on the layout of the trail in this part of the solve. So that cropped photo shows all of the trail. And he does even kind of in this short narrative allude to the fact that basically, and again, take it with a grain of salt, but he seems to allude to the idea that everything you need is on the actual map part. So the map, it's probably hard to tell on the screen. There's some incredibly faint writing in different places on the map. There's different symbols. One of the symbols looks almost like a puff of smoke. I know that one's one that is been up for debate, trying to figure out what that symbol is or represents. A lot of the other symbols are obviously very straightforward. But this element to a potential solve revolves around the layout and shape of the what appears to be the trail. So in the upper left-hand corner, as Blake just said, that's the map and the trail that's shown in the book itself. The lower left-hand corner is a trail that actually loops off of the Appalachian Trail, loops off of and then connects back to the Appalachian Trail by Green Mountain, Little Lake, Little Rock Pond. So there's another clip of that. And if on the right, you can see the 2 overlaid. And I did that overlay and it's not perfect. You can get it even closer. I didn't adjust the scale of anything there. I just did the scale. I didn't adjust the height to width ratio. So it's all scaled correctly still. I didn't make it squatty or stretch it out in any direction. So yeah, I've seen other people do this same thing. I mean, that's how I got the idea by seeing a handful of other people do it online. And their maps, I'm not sure if they kept the same ratios or not, but theirs seem to line up even closer than this does. But even the way that this lines up, you can see that it's pretty close, pretty convincing. And like I said earlier, I've seen at least 2 notes online. Again, could be hyperbole, but referencing quote unquote thousands of people in this area, kind of scouring this area, and no one seems to have found it. No, I find that interesting because I don't see a clear indication. Like I see that I would probably buy at least 50-50 that is the trail that they're showing on the map, but I'm not seeing like where on that trail, unless again you're going back to just brute force and checking, as far off the sides of that trail as you can and just scouring the whole area. I'm not seeing like a specific location to be checking. I believe there's also snow up there, I want to say, so that could be a factor as well. Yeah, what do you guys think?
I mean, this is very convincing to me. The compass rose that's on this map, does it have the north, south, east, and west in the book itself?
Does the compass have north, south, east, and west?
Yeah, just because when you're looking at this map, the one you pulled from, I'm assuming Google Maps here, I'm assuming that up is north oriented, but the compass rose here, you had to turn it like some number of degrees, quite a
Yeah,
bit
like close
to get it.
close to 180 degrees. Yeah,
Okay,
and
okay,
not exactly 180 degrees, but close to 180. I think it was like, oh, I think it was like 165 degrees, somewhere in
okay.
that area. Unless you're looking for more decimal places there.
Right, right. No, no. I just
That is an interesting
seems
point though, because he's showing uh, a compass. Now, granted, that's not labeled like north, south, east, west, from what I can tell, but it definitely doesn't line up. If you're assuming that up on the page is north, it doesn't line up with um, north in real life.
right, right. So that's interesting. And then there's a little skier up here. I see.
Yes.
Anybody found a ski resort near there? But if there's snow
Um,
happening, maybe there is.
yeah.
Is there
I haven't looked at
talk
it to that
around
much depth.
what the so I see a tree. What's this like? What's the triangle kind of at the end of the path?
It says begin here, and
Oh,
there's
okay.
a
Oh,
triangle,
interesting. Okay.
which would kind of lead you to believe that the other triangle that you can see in the upper left-hand corner on the other end would potentially be end there, and you can barely see it on that photo if you can. So there
Right.
also appears to be a very faint X, very faint, just to the north, mostly north, slightly northeast of that triangle. You probably can't even see it.
Okay.
It's very faint even in the book.
Cool. Yeah, this is super helpful. I hadn't dove into this Appalachian Trail footpath box at all yet, so all sorts of
Yeah,
goodies that you're providing to us, Cody. Thank you.
it
Again,
definitely.
this one is not an original. This is a Discord Detectives, where I've gathered this information from multiple sources online. I'm just reporting what seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that is the trail, but the compass does throw a wrench in that. So it's like you need to realign things differently to get to that next layer of how to use it. I mean, I haven't looked
Yeah.
into it at all, but the compass obviously was included on there for a reason.
I have mixed feelings on it. I did not buy into a lot of the hype around like the coins showing angles where states meet. Um, I just generally, my gut kind of tells me that there's just with so many features on so many different maps, there's a lot of things that can line up with a lot of things. Um, this one's obviously a lot more complex, a lot more twists and turns, and it still lines up. So my gut's telling me like 50-50 that that's the right area. I think that even if that is the right area, there's more complexity to it. Because, I mean, JCB's got to know. I mean, he's going to be sending out books to people are going to be buying books who live in that area and have been on that trail multiple times. I mean, it's just got to be more complex than, hey, look, this matches the trail 1-to-1 scale, and I'll just go jump out there and go look for it. So yeah, I don't know. I got mixed feelings on that one, and I'm honestly not as well read on the Appalachian footpath box as I am on some of the other ones.
That was a good recap, and I'm again now intrigued in another part two box.
Well, you can be the 1,001st person out there in the snow looking for
Yeah,
that one.
I'm gonna be spreading myself thin across boxes here.
Oh, that was very, very enlightening. Thank you, Cody. All right. Shall we move into coincidence of the day? That's you, Cody, I think.
Also,
Is that
Very
Cody.
right?
nice. Very nice. Very nice. People are going to get sick of my voice. I'm getting sick of my own voice.
No.
All right. This coincidence of the day is going to be pretty short and sweet. I'm excited to get on to the next thing where we discuss the chapter because I hear Blake's got some just excellent gems. So this one, quick recap. Coincidence of the day is something that kind of initially piqued our interest. We saw something, went, "Ooh, that could be something." Figured out whether quickly or not quickly that it's not something worth pursuing, and we're really just reporting it back so that people, if they come across the same thing, don't waste time going down a rabbit hole or a path that we're pretty certain isn't going to lead anywhere. So this one's pretty short and sweet. Actually has to do with the chapter 4, which we are discussing today. It's going to talk about an emerald mine. I did some background research into the emerald mine, and one of the things I really love in doing background research, and again, whether JCB wants us to be doing this or not, I love the like additional research and especially finding something obscure. Because I feel like for me, the way my brain works is like, oh, if it's obscure, there's a better chance that it's a good, cool hint. Um, so I found in referencing or in doing background information on the mine, a couple of really obscure sites with references to something called John's Hole within the mine. And of course, that's going to pique my interest, right? And it was spelled differently, but I thought, I mean, if they're just hearing about this by hearsay, um, they spelled John however you want. Ended up looking into that. uh, it is not related to the treasure hunt. There's a man literally named John at that mine who apparently, I didn't do a lot of reading on him, but apparently he shows up like every day, has been mining the same hole for years and years. I think he even has like even on like social media and stuff, posting pictures of stuff he's pulling out of that mine. So
Okay.
if you do research into the emerald mine and you come across John's hole and you think, hey, wonder if that's related to the treasure hunt, it is not. Coincidence of the day. Done.
Just a local legend, it
Just a
sounds like.
local legend. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like found like 2 references to him online, and I was like, "Ooh, this is gonna be good." Maybe it's JCB in that hole with the treasure.
All right. Shall we dive into the heart of the content today? We're going to be covering chapter 4 of There's Treasure Inside. Chapter 4 is titled The 96 Carat Chivor Emerald. And the subtext of this chapter is Blaze the Path. We have 1 quote associated with this instead of 2. Make note of that. This is the quote by Robert Frost, so probably one of the more famous quotes in the book so far. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. All right. I think Bryn, you volunteered to kick us off. Is that right? With a summary
Yeah,
of this chapter content.
I'll kick us off of the beginning part of the chapter. So it starts with a throwback to John's childhood, talking about him growing up and a local spot pretty close to his house that he liked to frequent, with the dream of digging for treasure, kind of speaking through that natural draw and addiction to wanting to find treasure, that human instinct, especially with the creative mind of a child. Going to this lot, digging up rocks, thinking he's going to uncover some gems. Um, Never finding anything, but just kind of always revisiting with the sense of like, oh, the next one is going to be it. Um, and so then that ties into, speaking about another child, different part of the country, Rob Levinsky, who liked collecting fossils. Um, Ultimately, Rob had his fossils on display at his dad's office. I can't remember what type of office it was, but this man came to visit his dad and was impressed with this fossil collection and was asking about it. And he was like, "Oh, it's my son's. I can connect you to." So this man was Carlton Davis. He was involved with the Columbus Rock and Mineral Society, So Carlton and Rob ultimately met, and Carlton got Rob involved in the Rock and Mineral Society, um, and kind of got him involved with like the different community events that they had. And ultimately, Rob, as he grew older, just like teen years and stuff, started kind of doing his own dealing at these shows. Um, and long story short, ultimately became the largest rare mineral dealer, um, through utilizing the internet, and essentially created, he wanted to mirror like fine art exhibits to kind of create like that culture around the minerals gems world, which didn't have that before. So kind of elevated it to the next level. And through this, he was building his clientele and reputation. So that's kind of the first part, is introducing Rob in this story.
Yeah, that's excellent. So that was more of the personal connection. I think uh, Jon Collins-Black said he's good friends with Rob Levinsky now, and that's how he was able to acquire the emerald from the Chivor mine in Colombia. That's part of this treasure. We're not sure what box it's in. It's not specified, but yeah, there's a 96 carat emerald in one of the treasure boxes. That's probably highly valuable. Um, the second part of the chapter really dives into some historical context, and it kind of weaves its way back to the end of the chapter, which talks about specifically the Chivor mine, where this emerald came from. But there's a lot of interlude in between that, starting with talking about the history of emeralds. And he says that there are crowns that cavemen wore that have emeralds in them. I have not done the research myself to validate that fact, but that's what Jon Collins-Black is stating in this book. That's kind of a one-off statement, and then he starts talking about how emerald mining really took off in Egypt, as kind of the originators of people that were formally mining emeralds. Talks about Cleopatra and Julius Caesar doing, I think, some sort of emerald trading or something like that. And then Augustus eventually taking over that emerald mining capacity at some point in ancient history, not ancient history, but ancient human history, let's say. And Augustus was able to generate quite a fortune based on the emerald mining that they took over in Egypt during that time. There's a hard pivot towards talking about Spain and emeralds at that point in the chapter, and talking about Christopher Columbus, and a lot of explorers during that time kind of using the greed of the ruling king and queen of Spain during that time to get expeditions funded, and with the promise that they're going to find riches or a quicker way to Asia, for example, for Christopher Columbus. And then once it was found that it was actually, North and South America that were discovered, then they switched the narrative to there's a city called El Dorado, which is a city made of gold. And now we're going to find that and bring back all the riches for that to get their expeditions funded. Then it kind of shifts to the discovery of the Chivor mine in Colombia by the conquistadors. They mined the finest emeralds in the world out of that mine. And eventually the location of that mine got lost. And I don't remember exactly how that happened. I apologize. And then the last part of the chapter is another guy, Don Francisco Restropo. He led an expedition like 200 years after the Chivor mine's location got lost to try to re-find that mine. and it was the location of the mine was based on a single clue that basically you had to find a clearing that had a certain view of a mountain range where you could see two peaks. And so that was the information they had to go on, and they started, going through the Colombian jungle, trying to hack their way through to randomly come across this particular viewpoint, which they actually did eventually find, and then reopen that emerald mine, where some of the finest emerald specimens in the world have come from. And so this particular emerald that's covered in this chapter is from that Chivor mine that was rediscovered by Don Francisco Resposto. Any questions? So
Did a
little
much.
longer chapter than the last one we covered, and a lot of content that obviously I didn't cover in great detail. So apologies for folks that don't have the book yet that can't read through that in detail, but that's the gist of it. So yeah, kind of I don't know. As we were mentioning before, like a lot of different points and different concepts that were brought up in this chapter, all of them revolving around blazing a trail, blaze your own path. This concept, I think, is a little confusing to me as to how it relates to the treasure hunt. Right now, I think the way we're involved is certainly trying our own solves, which we've been presenting, but also being involved in the communities. So, Discord, Reddit communities. And that kind of goes against blazing your own trail by using a community solve approach. So I'm not quite sure what to make of that. I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's quite that straightforward. I think that you can be part of the community, and it's important to be part of the community. You just can't let the community's consensi, you can't treat that as gospel, right? You need
Right.
to still think for yourself, blaze your own trail, come up with your own ideas. I think we're acting that out now. We're doing that. We're getting involved with the community, seeing what other people have to say. 2 minds or 3 minds is better than one, but you just can't lose sight of the fact that at some point, if you have an idea, you need to follow it, blaze your own trail. Don't just only be retracing the footsteps of people who have already done solves in this case. Because if you're always following someone else's solve, you'll never be the first to the treasure.
You'll be the 1,001st, Bryn.
I'm not on my way. I'm not. Yeah, I think exactly what you're saying. I think like leaving space for original thoughts
That's a
is
good way of
certainly
putting it.
going to be a key component. I mean, I don't need to rehash everything you just said, but I think that's all very good points.
Yeah. Any other thoughts you want to bring up before we go into our FFPNs this week?
He's definitely continuing his trend of, as we described them, hard pivots, just hard pivot after hard pivot after hard pivot every chapter until he kind of does a full 360. So it's an interesting writing style, and it's kind of what I'm expecting now at this point. Is just expect the hard pivots.
Can we go back to chapter 1 just for a second and revisit a question we had there about that weird picture of Scotty from Star Trek?
Yeah.
Now that we're 4 chapters in, I haven't come across any jarring images like we saw with that one in terms of like fitting the theme. Like all the other artwork and drawings and figures have all been like very well related to the chapter content, I would say at this point.
Yes. Yes.
I almost wonder if it was there like so early on, so prominent, such a large picture. Granted, I did not pick up on it, but if it was placed there as like just kind of almost more of a warning of like pay attention to everything, like don't overlook, just be on your toes and pay attention to all the different components of the book. I don't necessarily believe that. I don't buy that necessarily, but I think it could be one way of looking at it
So
just
you're almost
because.
describing it like it's a red herring. See,
Yeah.
I don't think when he put the picture in there, that his intent was that people wouldn't catch it. I know that you didn't, Britain, but
I didn't either. I mean,
oh really? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I knew it was Scotty from Star Trek, but I didn't. My
okay.
mind didn't say that's weird.
I think Bryn had said that she thought it was oh
Scott,
God, what's his name? Yeah,
Scott.
the other Scott
The other
from the
Scott.
Yeah.
chapter. So, but I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it was his intent to make you think that, oh no, this is the Scott from the chapter unless you look really closely. I think it was
No, and that's not what I'm saying. I think what I'm saying is potential is just like as an introduction to the book, like just be aware of your surroundings in this book, more or less. Like, I don't
and
know.
we'd talked previously about if we think that JCB would put like very specific red herrings in the book just to like increase the number of clues, even though it's not associated with any of the solves. I think we had kind of unanimously decided we don't think he's going to do that. Like, obviously, you can't be sure, but we don't think he will. So, if we truly believe that, when this is all said and done, one of these 5 boxes will have something to do with Scotty from Star Trek.
I'm going back on what I just said too, because I do think there's a connection with what we were talking about with the lasers. It just,
Mm-hmm.
I do think what I was saying is hypothetical, but
I was
I'm
like,
yes, very out on that take. Just want that to be clear. I think Scotty is playing into that. But yes, there haven't been any other weird pictures that I've noticed
right. And you're
in
referencing when
these.
they said in that one chapter, his child's eyes like blue lasers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the ultraviolet rays, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It is fitting.
All
The
right.
other thing that stuck out to me just as something to keep in mind, talking about like trying to rediscover this mine and the only hint that they had being this like general geographic landmark, just got me thinking about like, well, how when John's saying like the clues will get us within a reasonable proximity to the clue or to the treasure, what does that actually look like? And will there be still some sort of like quest? No, obviously not to this extent, but like, will we have to still decipher what a find a specific landmark and go from there? Um, or if we do a solve correctly, should we really be able to stumble upon this,
So
wherever it may be?
you're saying if you've solved everything he's given you to solve, are you going to be 5 feet from the treasure, or are you going to be within a quarter-mile radius where you still could have to spend 2 days looking to actually find it?
Right. Yeah, I
I'd
guess
let,
I just don't know. I don't know how far to read into like this specific
yeah,
story of like them still having to go on this hunt for the mine.
yeah,
Blaze a path. Yeah.
yeah. I'd like to believe that, and I don't even know if I have like, I think even some of his quotes might disagree with what I'm about to say. But I'd like to believe that it's more about the solve than the search, and that if you do all the solves correctly, you're there with the treasure, within, again, this is a loose term, but within a reasonable distance, less like not all day searching kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I think I recall vaguely some quotes where he kind of talks about getting out and looking around that would lead you to believe that maybe there is some searching involved, but
A grid
um,
search. Yeah.
yeah.
But I
Uh,
guess that also feels most fair. Like if you truly solve
yeah,
the puzzle, it feels fair that you should find it and not, have to have it just come down to a hunt.
I agree. Yeah, add it to the list of things that after someone finds the first box, we'll finally get an answer to.
Hmm.
At the risk of stealing someone's FFPN, I hope I'm not, but since Blake brought up artwork within the chapters,
Mm.
this chapter does contain a picture that is also on the cover of the book.
Oh, really? I did
So
not know that.
there's like probably 5 or 6 photos pulled from the book that then made it onto the cover.
Okay.
One of them is what appears to be this group of people bushwhacking through the jungle. It's a green and black image. Kind of. I mean, he hasn't been consistent with the type of artwork he's had in the book, but this one does seem kind of to stand out as just a different, unique drawing style. Um, I will also remind everyone that on one of the front pages of the book, there's a quote that says that the artwork was created by author unless noted otherwise. So this, I would take that to mean that JCB himself drew this or commissioned this drawing, so it's specifically for the book. I don't know how you want to interpret that. I guess my biggest question, and the point I'm getting to, do you guys think that he just picked drawings they thought would look good on the cover, or do you think there's any other significance to which drawings they pulled out to put on the cover of the book?
I think, I mean, loosely, I feel like they match the colors of the X quadrants that he's put on. So like the green, the emerald is on the green part of the X, right? I don't know. I don't have the book right in front of me. Is that
Yeah,
why? I think there's
no,
gold on
it's
the gold section. Um,
yeah, but then there's gold on blue on the other one, and a Bitcoin
mm,
on red. So, I mean,
okay,
you're right in some sense, but it doesn't seem like it's a hard and fast rule for the cover. And this is obviously just a gut feeling kind of question, not
right.
Yeah,
not a.
I'm personally not going to read too much into the cover art in terms of selections. Although, as Bryn mentioned, the X in the book jacket lines up with the quote on the back of the jacket. Potentially there's something there. I have not really looked into it too deeply yet, but my gut says no, but maybe that's a mistake.
Yeah, I did do a little bit of a dive into the graphic designer that designed the book cover today. I was just trying to figure out like I don't know if I could look at any of his other projects to see similar styles. There's a few specific things about the cover that I was interested in, thought were a little suspicious that I wanted to look into, but um, yeah, it goes back to him not wanting to bring too many people into it or reveal things to other people. So I do think it would be hard to brief an artist on what you are like maybe specifically trying to see in a cover without giving anything away. So I would imagine he just gave a set of assets being the artwork from this book and kind of gave a general direction to this designer, would be my guess.
So
Nice.
when it says in the book artwork was created by author unless otherwise noted, um, I've never had to think about that before. So I mean, I guess my gut take is like, okay, that's literally drawn by the author of the book, but that's not the case then. You guys know way
I
more about this than I do.
I think that some of the artwork is AI generated, actually.
Ooh, okay.
Particularly in some of the later chapters that I've browsed through, some of the artwork looks a little suspect, and I think there's other people online that are speculating that as well.
Ooh, I like that
But
take a
yeah,
lot. Yeah.
for this particular image of the jungle with the explorers, doesn't look as AI to me, I guess. So it could be that he designed it and kind of drew a sketch out and then had somebody actually draw it. I'm not sure, but the artwork was created by the author, and so that is not clear what means were used to create the artwork.
And also the AI thing could also be a good reason for why there's so many different illustration styles. I think it's pretty hard to rein
That's
that
true.
in if you're like giving a bunch of prompts to make that consistent.
Yeah, no, that's an open question. I think we should do some more investigation and check the community to see if there's dead giveaways that some of this is AI or not. So I haven't looked into it too deeply.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a couple more questions related to the images in the book and questions specifically for you guys to get your take on stuff. But I am way too excited to hear about Blake's awesome FFPN. So we got to get. I want to get moving into that segment.
We leave Blake for last, the grand finale.
Yes, because mine's terrible. I this
Oh,
Did I
you
Yeah, you
talk over
missed
it
stumbled
it
again?
again.
No.
You
Uh,
talked over the transition sound effect. It'll have to be next time. Sorry, Cody.
oh my God. All right. Next time I'm just not talking until this segment after you play the sound effect. Oh God. Okay. Yeah, I'll go first if you guys don't mind, just
Sure.
because I don't know if people watched the last podcast. That was one where I picked a million things out of that chapter and was intrigued by all of them. And then now I'm kind of hit with the opposite on this next chapter that's longer. And you two seem to have gotten more out of. And I've read it a handful of times, and I don't know. I feel like once I hear your takes on it, I'm gonna feel like an idiot. But I guess my FFPN was Logic whispered, "This rock is probably yet another dark, smoky quartz. There'll be no shine or shimmer or sparkle." My heart yelled back, "This time it will."
Hmm.
I got that one. Again, this is just, I don't feel great about this chapter and my take on it, but um, I just noticed the similarities between that text, specifically the word sparkle, and then
Hmm.
the small little excerpt on the inside of um, the wrap on the cover where it said, "Be solid, have grit, sparkle even as you pine. Here lies a joy divine."
Hmm.
That's
That's a
pretty
good
much
one.
it.
I like
I'm a
that. Yeah.
I'm a chapter 3 guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Chapter 3 degree, not chapter 4. No, that's good. That's a good relationship for the sparkle. Yeah, I did not pick up on that.
All right, mine. So this goes back to Rob establishing himself in like the Emerald Rock Mineral Society, building his reputation. So the quote is, "Just as he had with sandstone formations, Rob looked around, then chose the line he wanted to follow." As far as kind of like picking his strategic path, as far as his career or life moves. Um, that quote just felt pretty forced, like that's just not a natural thing that you would say. And so I think like the looking around, choosing a line, I think that is going to come into play later. How, I don't know. I don't know if you guys have more possible insight on what that could mean, but it just seemed like it was well worth flagging uh, as a nugget to come back to.
Can you read that
Yeah.
one more time? Read the quote one more time.
Yeah, just as he had with sandstone formations, Rob looked around, then chose the line he wanted to follow. So it almost seems like there would be a point, like within our physical hunt, that you would fall back on this. Maybe not directly, but like the idea of this would come into play.
Yes, you've selected one of my nuggets.
Mm.
One of.
So yeah, that was one, but I have more actually on that one.
Okay.
Because there's a quote later on that is related to that as well. It's when he was trying to decide whether he was going to go into biology or into mineral trading, and then it says he examined his path closely, and the evidence pointed in one direction.
Mm. I didn't
So I
pick
think
up on that.
so that both of those together are kind of both odd to me, and it wouldn't be so odd if I think they're trying to relate to blaze your own path, but they're kind of out of place. And I also my radar went up on that and said something's going on here, and it happens twice. So again, I agree with you. Like, it's not clear how to use that information right now, but those did both stick out to me. Rob looked around and then chose the line he wanted to follow. He examined his path closely, and the evidence pointed in one direction. Those are in two separate parts of the chapter, but both related, I
So we should probably listen to all of the One Direction albums.
feel.
Yes.
All right. I'll go to
Yeah, I
my.
mean that
Yeah, go ahead.
those two specific lines just feel like very like fundamental to like boots on the ground in a hunt, being intentional about like what is that next step that you take in what direction.
Yeah. Yeah, not particularly informative yet, but maybe as we keep going through, that will become more clear. We'll see. But yeah, the one I wanted to cover first was actually kind of around Cody's section that he mentioned at the beginning of the chapter. One thing to note that I wanted to was the very first sentence. Sorry, the second sentence on page 47, right at the beginning of the chapter. As the sun baked hot from its high arc above. That was the part I wanted to quote because it's kind of talking about geometry and maybe again, same with the path. We don't really know how to apply that yet, but something to do with high arc above that stuck out to me as odd. And then at the end of that page as well, there is he's talking about his collection of rocks. The pile of finger-sized rocks I had amassed was sorely unimpressive, yet my enthusiasm did not wane. And so I'm kind of capturing a sun moon type theme within that section of the chapter, I would say. And there's probably more connections I could make if I'm really trying to get confirmation bias on that. But those were two things that I linked together there. It also, right in that first part of the chapter, it's also like super descriptive about a set of directions that he used to get to his quarry, or his lot that he was using to mine his rocks looking for the quartz. I can just read it, but it also stuck out as just like very specific and not a style of writing he had used before. I had walked down the sloped street in front of my parents' small 3-bedroom suburban home to the cul-de-sac below. From there, I'd taken a sharp left, crossed the gravelly pavement, and stepped onto a barely worn path, mostly used by dogs that barked as they ran in packs around our neighborhood. The trail followed a metal chain-linked fence for a ways. Once past the fence, the path continued a little longer before ending abruptly at an empty lot. And so that was kind of the other thing I picked up on, is just like a strange writing style to me. He's never gone into detail like that before, and at least in terms of his personal experiences in terms of a geographical location. So combining that with the mention of an arc high above, the geometry part of this, the direction of the paths that come later in the chapter that Bryn mentioned, that just stuck out kind of as a sore thumb to me.
Along those same lines, of a lot of the things you guys are saying regarding paths, one thing I'd also written down was something about a trail of breadcrumbs,
Yeah.
which also kind of is along those same lines. The one thing that went through my mind, if the trail of breadcrumbs idea was something put in there specifically, was it would kind of give hints as to whether the clues for finding or clue for finding the treasure is either like one clue, oh, you solve this one thing and it gives you coordinates and you just go there, or is it, as some people are saying, it'll give you the state, narrow it down to like a town, narrow it down to a trail, narrow it down to a spot in the trail. And the idea of a breadcrumb trail definitely points more towards little bits at a time narrowing in on something versus just one big solve and okay, you got, coordinates or something, you can go pick it up.
Yeah, I think for the lion's share, certainly, I think it's going to be more of a trail of breadcrumbs that maybe you don't even need all of them to get to your solve, but you need a bunch of them throughout the 23 chapters, I would say. That's my gut feeling.
I think the breadcrumbs too can kind of go back. I can't remember if it was this episode or the last one where you talked to Cody about like getting through a solve and then using some of that information to work your way back to revisit where you've been to apply that learned information to what you didn't know before. So I mean, I think that's kind of like a purpose of breadcrumbs, right? To be able to find your way back.
That's right. And that was in association to the Japanese puzzle boxes.
Okay. Thank you.
From the last podcast. Anyway, that's what I've got. I don't think it's as exciting as your Pokemon stuff from last episode, but
No, it's really exciting. It was good. You guys want to hear a take that is not even good enough to make it on the coincidence of the day?
sure.
Yes,
So
please.
I had written down Alfred Pennyworth because I was like, what kind of,
Okay.
that's a random reference. And I literally just wrote that down and I was like, okay, just weird. And then your quote, that although his rocks weren't great, his enthusiasm never waned.
Oh man. Okay.
Coincidence
Oh
of the
my
day?
gosh.
Is this secretly the Batman chapter?
Now that you're saying that, man,
Tell
there
me
is
there's more.
something. No,
Tell me
there is
there's more.
something in the Discord about Batman, but I think it's about Past and Future box.
Oh
Because
my
it,
gosh.
because yes, it was because in the Past and Future box they mentioned his grandfather used to solve this Riddler in the newspaper,
Mm.
and so people were trying to connect that to Batman somehow. I think there was
Yeah.
maybe one more piece of evidence, confirmation bias, let's say, that kind of connected that. But yeah,
You heard it here first.
okay. That's good. But
Batman's half the solve.
I am pulling a Cody here this week because I also thought that Alfred Pennyworth was weird, and I didn't write it down. I forgot to. So good job.
Uh,
Did you find anything interesting about Alfred Pennyworth?
no,
Oh,
no.
okay.
I mean, no.
Fair. That's all that needs to be said. One bonus. We won't call it a nugget. We'll call it a flake. Um, like a bee landing on a pistol. That was like a very specific biological term for a flower.
Yeah, I had to
And
Google that
so
one.
linking that back to kind of the flower terminology from chapter 3, I thought was kind of interesting that there seems to be some flowery language. Because even in chapter 3, I didn't mention it last time, but I had written down when they were talking about the puzzle box, there is a budding joy in the detailed movements to open one. And so that, again, was another kind of flower term. So I think there might be something there. I might be grasping at straws, but why flowers and why use pistol and a bee landing on a pistol? Like, that's very strange.
Yeah, he
So that,
definitely, and we talked about this in the last episode. He definitely has like a vocabulary that's at a certain point, at a certain baseline,
yeah.
and then he'll just randomly like two or three, not even two, sometimes one or two times per chapter, just shoot out oh, my thesaurus fell off the wall and I decided to look up one letter word in there. And it's like, I don't know, maybe when he was doing his research for another chapter with flowers, he came across that word and it just stuck with him. I know
Yeah.
I'm like that sometimes, or I just pick up one word and it's like, I'm gonna throw this in conversation. But
I
yeah,
do
it's
think
definitely like once or twice a chapter just shoots out a word of the day.
Word of the day.
though, like this, say flower thread as an example, I do think uh the more chapters we read, I think it's going to be more and more important to try to figure out what these connections can be that we draw from chapter to chapter,
Yeah.
because ultimately this is painting one picture. So right now we're going through it as like, a chapter by chapter approach, but ultimately it's all going to have to come together. So any opportunity we have, like where these flower references may seem weird and out of context within the chapters themselves, I think we need to be very intentional about keeping track of what we think could tie together
Yeah, it's a
throughout.
really good point. Yeah, and hopefully by the time we hit like 7 or 8, we realize like the 3 or 4 recurring things that we keep seeing in multiple chapters and can kind of start looking out for those more. That's a really good point. Maybe more Batman references.
Yeah. Look out for
Maybe.
Penguin, Two-Face, Robin. Okay, so you're telling me there's probably gonna be more than 30 episodes of this.
We're just getting started.
Oh yeah. He
All
did
right,
say read through it and then read through it again, right? So
that's right.
we'll just do another episode of each chapter,
Yeah.
run it back.
Yeah, chapter 4.1.
All
Do you guys
right.
want a little side question, or you want to save that for another podcast?
No, I would love to hear it. You've been teasing us with potential some side conversations, so I would like to hear one of these if possible.
All right, I'll just give you a quick one because some of
Okay.
my I think I've got at least one, maybe two other whole side discussions I want to have and get you guys' takes on a couple things and do a little bit of a deep dive. Maybe if there's a short chapter one of these times coming up, but short one just because it's a little bit on theme since we were spending so much time talking about the pictures included in the chapters. Something that I was thinking about, I wanted to get your take on while I was going through a couple of the part two um, boxes, and also actually also in the chapters as well. And it's another one of those "do you think he would" kind of questions.
Right.
Do you do you think he would purposefully? And let me give you a couple of examples before I answer. Ultimately, the question is, do you think he would purposely alter like a photograph image in the book to create a clue? So obviously, like last podcast, we looked at the image for the Pokemon box, and that one was digitally altered, and you know, that's to be expected. I mean, you look at it and it's not a photorealistic image, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I've also a couple of like the things I looked into was like there's a Bitcoin for one of the boxes that's photographed, and it's like a photorealistic actual picture of the Bitcoin that's included in one of the treasure boxes, and it's got some binary numbers on the bottom. And I thought, would he, you can look online and see that there are also Bitcoins with those numbers. Would he take that photo and alter those to say something different, or something like the picture of the Charizard Pokemon card that's included in the box? Everyone knows what a Charizard card looks like. He can't obviously just make it not Charizard and say it's Charizard, but he could change like the hit points or like the description of
Mhm.
one of the attacks. Um, and a lot of times there's a caption underneath those photos that says, this is the Charizard card that's included in the box. So my would he do this gut feeling question for you guys is, if it's a photorealistic image and he says this is what it is, do you think it's fair or valid or something he would do to alter a photorealistic image to include a hint in it?
My gut says no, because I think the book itself is so based on uh, the storytelling of the treasures and so I think he holds these treasures. Uh, I think he has a lot of respect for the things that he hid. Um, and I think for the sake and the integrity of the things that he hid and the stories that he's telling, I don't think he would alter those pictures specifically.
Yeah, I have the opposite reaction. I
Ooh,
think he
I've
certainly
created a
could.
controversial
Yeah.
question.
I think he certainly could. I mean, he included a picture of Scotty from Star Trek for some reason. And maybe that's a clue in of itself, but I think certainly there's fair play in terms of altering something to hide a symbol, or just based on the first, four chapters and introduction of hiding something. I think that the whole book is fair game, in my opinion.
Yeah. So Bryn thinks the items are sacred and should not be altered,
I,
and Blake
I'm
thinks it's all fair game.
I think it's all fair game. I think Bryn's argument's really good. It slightly changed my gut reaction, but maybe the treasures are off limits, but other figures are not. But I would not limit myself to looking for clues in all of the images. I'm not going to do that.
Okay. And I mean, you guys both answered the question really well. My intent, I guess, when I was thinking up the question, or when it first occurred to me and I was asking it to myself, is less about would he hide a symbol that's obviously like you see it and you're like, oh, that's obviously not part of the image, and more
Yeah.
about would he alter something like, again, like the Charizard, like if he changed his number of hit points from whatever it is 120 or whatever it is to you know 240, because
Mm-hmm.
that's part of a hint, where it's less weird, obviously not part of the photo symbol inserted, and more of altering something and hiding in plain sight. I don't know if that
Yeah.
changes your answers. It probably
Mm,
doesn't, but that was kind of what I was thinking as I was thinking about it.
no. I think it just diminishes the historical significance of the items themselves. I mean, harder to argue for a Charizard card than, these gold rings or something like that, but
Well, it
um
depends who you are.
okay. I think it's just taking away uh something that he personally is caring very deeply about in writing and learning about all of these items specifically.
Nice. You were able to get that two yet new yet reference in this episode. Good job. Sorry.
Nice. Well, I'm glad I
I
asked the
didn't mean to
question.
diminish your solid point there.
It's
But yeah,
okay.
no, if I were designing it, and you've talked a lot about trying to reverse engineer the mind, like I think that'd be a clever way to hide a hint. Personally, I like that approach. So I wouldn't I wouldn't I would keep it in mind as we're reviewing the book and the images.
Nice. I'm glad I asked the question because it's we've been talking kind of, I think, mostly offline, but talking about how it's so interesting how the three of our brains work so differently, and we can like read the same thing and take away very different things. So it's always interesting to ask a question that I'm uncertain about and get two very different answers. You guys each argue your point.
Good bonus question, Cody. Awesome. All right. I think that's an episode, folks. If you have questions or comments, leave them in the YouTube video or the podcast player. Or even better, send an email to tips.ttiunofficialpodcast@gmail.com. That link will be below wherever you're watching this or listening to this. If there's any topics you want us to revisit, new topics you want us to discuss, or breaking news, anything you want to report, let us know via that channel. Thanks, Bryn. Thanks, Cody.
Thank you.
Have a good night, treasure hunters.
Searching for clues, let's find you.